All right, folks, we're just going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for coming to the first of the MADE Forum. We really want to do these about once every 2 months or so. Bring in folks from the industry, bring in folks who are working on really interesting things. And if you have any suggestions on people you'd like us to try to get into any of these speaker series, just let me know. Shoot an email off to info@themade.org. All right, so today we have our first speakers, some designers from Double Fine Entertainment. If you know a little bit about Double Fine, it started with Tim Schafer, who worked over at Lucasfilm and LucasArts, working on some amazing adventure games. Oh, yes?
It's already here.
Oh, it is? Okay.
So, hi, I'm Seth, and a lot of my story is going to sound strangely similar to what Ben just said, but I think an important thing to think about is that it's a little bit in the future. So, like when I'm going through stuff, it's probably like about 5 to 6 years later, and so I think we'll see some elements that changed as we kind of go through that. But first, like my beginning, I did not start off with a Commodore 64, but the first computer that I ever got to use was a Macintosh Plus. My dad brought it home from work for 2 weeks, and I was like, what is this magical device? How can it do so many things? This is amazing. And I immediately set about like trying to figure out how I could get a computer, like going to like garage sales and looking the penny saver and that kind of stuff. And so I finally like got a hold of one, and just like the C64, the Apple II starts up in BASIC. And so, you know, checked out some books from the library and learned like, oh, I can make like things that insult my friends when they type their name into this prompt or whatever, but not really make anything meaningful at that point. But overall, I was like, I'm really excited about computers, and the most fun thing to do on a computer is play a game. So I started playing a lot of games. You know, initially, because a lot of my computers that I had access to were very old, I played a lot of adventure games because they did not require a lot of horsepower by the time we got to the early 90s. By the time I actually had access to a modern computer, I kind of started playing a lot of first-person shooters, because at the time that was like the exciting thing. Like 3D acceleration was coming out, and I had friends that were playing games as well, and we wanted to play multiplayer, and they also had mods for Doom and stuff like that, right? I had the first level I ever made was like getting a level editor for Wolfenstein 3D and just like making mazes on that. And I found it all really, really interesting. But it never really occurred to me that like I could go make games as a living, I don't think. It's like I played a lot of games. It's kind of what I did as my main hobby, but I didn't really have a plan about what I was going to do. I, unlike Ben, took 0 computer science classes in college, and then for some reason applied to get a computer science degree, and went to a school that immediately had you start programming on day 1, having never done anything other than like type stuff in from like a book I checked out of the library on an Apple II. I don't really know what I was thinking or what I really thought computer science even was, but like it was definitely rough for the first couple years while I figured that out. But like towards the end of it, I started being able to really get into things and actually start doing like graphics programming and take AI classes once I got to this point where you could do specific things. And I was like, oh, actually, like I can make games for a lot of these projects, and I like games a lot. Because this whole time, yeah, we can skip over that one. Whoa. Okay, well, that doesn't really matter. I don't know what's loading. But the whole time that I was in high school, college, all that kind of stuff, I was always just like trying to make games and not necessarily succeeding as we went through this stuff. So I was like hacking things into the old King's Quest engine, or making like levels for Half-Life and Quake or stuff like that. I don't know why this one doesn't want to load. Anyway, on there are some pictures of my very bad early games. But right at the very end of...
You're being censored.
Yeah, they're so amateur hour that like no one can even look. I'm sorry. No, but by the time I was kind of graduating from college, there did start to be some very specific, like domain-specific engines available. So like Adventure Game Studio had come out, and I even made a really bad adventure game engine as like one of my senior projects, and I don't know why, but the demo game I implemented in it was tic-tac-toe and not an adventure game. I still don't understand why I was doing that. But anyway, I downloaded Adventure Game Studio and was like, what did I do with my life? Why did I build my own engine? This thing's just on the internet for free. And I proceeded to like make an adventure game, and it was the first thing that was remotely like anything I would actually want to play that I had made. And it had a beginning, a middle, and an end, and someone online wrote a walkthrough for it, and I was like, this is great. And so like throughout that whole process, I started to think like maybe I actually could make games, as, and not just play them, right? And like through the like building these school projects and stuff, I realized like I really do like making games, and specifically I like designing the worlds, the puzzles, finding ways to tell story through like whatever tool I've got, like whether it's just like adding environmental details to like a Quake deathmatch map, or like writing jokes for an adventure game or whatever. Those are the things that really resonated with me. I definitely get like really big ideas, and then when I can't get them to happen quickly on the computer, get very frustrated and will give up. And that's why like having to do school projects where I had other people depending on me to like get the game content done, particularly in the computer science program, where there's a lot of people that just want to program a shader and are truly engineers, whereas I'm an engineering program, but I really just want to build the level editor. But they're depending on you to get that thing done, really forced me to make enough games that I could gain the confidence that this was something I could actually do. So after I graduated from undergrad, I was like, I kind of want to make games, except everything that I've done really has prepared me to go like work on databases at Amazon or something like that. Because I think kind of like in Ben's story, there are people that you run into that are you're just like, I don't understand how you were like literally born to write code, like low-level graphics physics code. I'm like, I can do that, but it takes me 3 times as long as you, and I don't smile the entire time. Whereas you're like literally, we're like, I don't know how to do anything else. And those are the people that are born to be gameplay engineers, and I was not one of them. So I was like, what am I gonna do? Because I interviewed at like some Bay Area companies and stuff like that, and this is like the PS2 Nintendo DS era of like they were just ending, and all the programming questions were like, you have 32 megs of RAM, how are you going to load this entire like castle? I'm like, I don't know. I needed to find a way to kind of stall things out, because I had accidentally gotten an undergrad degree that wasn't very applicable to what I wanted to do. So I went to the knockoff version of the ETC from Carnegie Mellon at a place called the Center for Digital Media in Vancouver. They like literally copied the like course curriculum from ETC for the first couple years, and so I basically took the same classes just at a different place in a different environment. It's now changed a bunch, but I was able to pivot to doing a lot more design and production work there. And similar to the previous story, I got an internship at EA. EA was just handing out internships in the early 2000s. It's basically what we're learning here. But I worked there for a little while at Redwood Shores, just on the peninsula. And at the time, I was still mostly doing programming, but it was like Flash stuff. This was like just before social games became like a thing that anyone cared about. And then about a year later, when I was about to graduate, this magical thing happened, at least for me, which was that half of the Dead Space 2 team quit. To go form Sledgehammer Games. And I had a recommendation letter from someone, my intern manager, and I still to this day do not really understand why, but they gave me a job making levels on Dead Space 2, even though I'd never made a level professionally, or even like a good level. And so I worked on that, and it turned out that I actually really loved it. I stuck around there for 5 years, working on Dead Space 2, 3, and then making some shooters. I left console games for a little bit, being like, maybe I could go make mobile games, and it really was not my thing. It didn't have the kind of stuff that we were making, just didn't resonate with me in the same way of loving building like worlds and story and like presenting it in like an immersive kind of way. It was just not there. So when the opportunity came to go to Double Fine and work on Psychonauts 2, I was like, yes, instantly. So like for that period of time, like after realizing I wanted to go into the games industry, like what were, you know, some things that got confirmed? And like Ben was saying, like it's complicated to turn your hobby into the thing that you're doing, like for a living and paying your rent, but it was something I actually liked doing. And specifically, like, I've learned that I like making games, like the act of solving problems of like, how am I gonna like gate the player here and stuff like that. That even if it's somebody else's like idea, or like somebody just comes to me and basically hands me a game and it's like, hey, could you build this game for me? I would be like, yes, actually, because I just enjoy like the act of building them. And you know, specifically within that though, I have realized that that is a very specific kind of skill. And while I was able to bring a lot of my experience as an engineer, like software engineering, project architecture, like how you design a complex technical thing, sprints and all that sort of stuff, to games from my engineering background, there's a lot of very specific skills about building levels and stuff like that that I'm like, oh boy, I've really focused on one thing for now like about a decade, which is an interesting thing to think about when you're thinking about like careers, right? So bringing back Ben's slide from earlier, like I did go out and make like at least one complete game from a beginning, middle, and end that like I do feel like was a real validating thing for me as like this is something I really do want to do. But I don't think I was very intentional about it. Like I went and got an entire computer science degree, not realizing that that was like not what I wanted to do. But then again, you can't tell someone that's like 17 that they should have figured out what they want to do with their life. So like I don't regret it at all. But it is a thing of like specifically if you're looking at going to games, like what is it that I really want? I think I got really lucky that I landed in like the design space and that's what I wanted to do, but I just sort of like retroactively have validated it, I guess, in my own experience. But it is really complicated to think about it and like whether you want the thing that you love to be also the job that you do is can be a challenging thing. That. We're gonna hand it over to James, and then we'll have questions.
Hello. They responded. I was going to do that joke where like you don't respond and I say it again. Okay. So we work together, the three of us. We're on the same project, in fact. They're very smart. I hope you guys are remembering everything they're saying. Of the three of us, I'm the least intelligent, but I am the most interested in talking about myself. So I hope you enjoy my slides. Hi. I did not want to make a PowerPoint, so it is just images. I didn't even pick up on the fact that you had a whole structure, like learnings and things I would do. None of that in my section of this PowerPoint. So let's enjoy these visuals. So before I worked in games, I worked in theater. I was confident that I wanted to be a theater person. I did it for like a decade, starting at age 14. I was like a weird teenage actor. I was not good enough at acting or singing or dancing to do any of those things professionally. And so I very quickly went into stage management and stuff like that. I went to Rutgers for a theater degree. My last theater job was stage managing at Phantom on Broadway. So scary. That backstage is very narrow and there's very heavy set pieces. So if you mess up, you're going to like knock someone's head off. And I was like, this is too stressful and I'm not even getting to be creative back here. So I'm going to look for something else to do. And so I saw that NYU had started this new game design program, and I was excited because I was like, this is probably roughly as pretentious as the theater stuff I've been doing. And so it's going to make for an easy transition into the world of games. I'd always liked games. I'd always played games. I'd even messed around with 3D modeling. I don't know if any of you have played with RPG Maker. It's this series where you can make like little pixel art games that I had when I was younger. I would make like slash fiction games where Sephiroth had to kiss Cloud for the game to end. It was great. Pretension. This slide was for when I said the word pretentious, but I didn't press it fast enough. So I actually applied with 3D modeling stuff. I thought for sure I was going to be a 3D modeler. I gave them this portfolio of all this really cool remakes of famous video game characters like the Dragon Tank from Chrono Trigger and all this Bioshock stuff. And then I immediately stopped doing 3D modeling and never did it again. So I really tricked NYU to let me into their school. They immediately made me start making games. So my first week, I made this game, if it loads. It's about cleaning your apartment, because I realized at the time I hadn't cleaned my apartment in like a month since I moved to New York. And so it was about cleaning it before your mom gets home, and you get a score based on how well you cleaned. It was like a little mini game collection. I want you to see the screen where mom comes home. It's very cute. But yeah, I made this in Game Maker. I don't know if anyone knows about Game Maker anymore, but I made it in like 4 days. I'd never programmed before, and I just like fell in love with the concept of making games all by yourself. It was so cool that I could just sit at a computer and make an experience people could enjoy. And so then I just made a bunch of games. I made an Endless Runner. I made a game about like sucking your friends into a computer that I made in 2 days during a game jam. I made a game about Ted Cruz because they released a bunch of footage of him doing interviews, and it was like very uncomfortable and awkward. So it's about how he's a robot and how the government has been making him to... No, never mind. I made a game where you're a robot and you have to die to learn new things. Lots of stuff in my 2 years of grad school. And then halfway through grad school, I realized like I'd completely abandoned theater. I was so sad about it because I was like, I haven't seen a show in like 8 months. I don't talk to any of my theater friends anymore. And so I was like, okay, my thesis project is going to be about theater. So I came up with this idea for a game called Peter Panic. It is very much like WarioWare, but if WarioWare was super duper gay. And so I finished grad school. I had this game kind of half made, and I talked to Adult Swim about it, and Adult Swim decided to publish this game. Came out in 2016. This should be playing in the background. This is the Adult Swim fancy trailer that they put on TV for this game. And so I released this in 2016, and I didn't really know what to do next, but I knew I loved Double Fine, and so I applied to Double Fine for the 6th time after Peter Panic came out. I just kept applying to them over and over and over again. Increasingly desperate cover letters attached to every submission. I think they probably just eventually felt bad for me. I felt like this kid's gonna crack if we don't let him work here. And so I've spent the last 6 years working at Double Fine. It is so far my only AAA industry job. And so hopefully when we get into the Q&A, I can have some like more hyper relevant answers to questions about getting in the industry, because it's happened pretty recently for me. It was in 2017 that I started working there. But yeah, that's the long and short of it. I don't have a learning slide. They're so obvious what you can learn from my slides. So I believe we are, yep, that's it. We're going to move into the Q&A.
Just leave it on the double fine.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's why I did that.
Yay, James!
Thank you. Come on, friends.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
no,
let's
we're-
sit in front of the podium.
Yeah, we're gonna